Welcome to the Partner Enablement webinar by Inspitech. My name is Rostina from Inspitech, and I'll be the moderator for today's webinar. Okay, in this webinar, we'll be sharing with you on how we can simplify and secure file workloads in traditional NAS environments. I would like to introduce to you our speaker for today, Mr. Ting Teck Wei. He is the product manager from Inspitech and has 10 years of experience as an IT professional, handling projects of various sizes and complexities from MNCs to SMEs. His business and technology-trained background uniquely position him to leverage knowledge from domains to deliver additional value for customers. Okay, so before we start this webinar, I would like to highlight to everyone that if you have any questions during this webinar, please feel free to use the Q&A function located at the bottom of the Zoom panel as shown on the screen over here. Okay, let's move on to the agenda for today. The key talking points that we are going through today are as follows. Firstly, inevitability. Okay. Firstly, inevitability of data growth. Secondly, what a modern NAS needs. And thirdly, problem feature sets. Okay, and without further ado, I would like to pass the stage to our speaker, Mr. Ting Teck Wei, to share more about how you can help your prospects to simplify and secure file workloads in traditional NAS environments. Over to you, Mr. Teck Wei.
Okay, thanks, Rostina. Yep, thanks for the wonderful introduction. So, I'm Teck Wei. So I handle the product management of EasiShare in Inspitech. Before I start, I think I just want to re-emphasize again the topic today, which is very close to what EasiShare does, and yet at the same time, it's something that EasiShare can't solve alone, and that is the reason why we chose this topic for our partner enablement webinar. So along this webinar, I will also be sharing more about how our partnerships work and the strategy behind how we see our product as well, our go-to-market as well during this webinar. So the first thing I think I want to share a little bit of like how did we conceive this topic as well as the idea that we see in terms of the trends in the market and how does EasiShare as well as our partners can come together to provide the solution for the market. So this one is a little bit interesting. In fact, I would have to credit Rostina. She's actually the person who put up all these wonderful slides today. And I actually requested for this to be added last minute, just about a couple of days ago, as I think about the idea of food security and versus what we talk about in terms of file security. Given that EasiShare, most of you will have known, we are positioning ourselves as an enterprise file security platform. So a few keywords includes like file security as well as a platform. So regarding the word platform, I will also share a little bit more down the next few slides. Okay, so stepping back in terms of food security, right, we noticed that people do see in terms of immediate needs. So that will be the availability of the food now in terms of the access, the safety of the food to meet the needs of the nutrition needs of the population, etc. Right. So in terms of file security, right, we find that it's very similar in the sense that in recent years as well as years back, right, a lot of focus on ransomware, and in the further term, there was a lot of focus in terms of hardware failure, as well as certain maintenance and updates. So these were the problems, I would say, in the past, as well as in today's IT terms, right? When it comes to file security, the immediate needs. Now, the thing why I wanted to add this slide about food security is because when we talk about food security as well, we are remembering to talk about sustainability, the idea of future needs, as well as potential advancements in terms of whether will we have food security in the future. Now, this is something where I find that a lot of analysts do promote it, but in the file security space, we often forget that data growth as well as being able to handle data growth is something very important as well. So I would also like to bring out our CIA triad. So some of you that has joined our webinars a few times will know that we base a lot of our content based on information security structure, which is the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Now, why we always bring this up is because When it comes to file security, a lot of people like to talk about ransomware, encryption, protection, that kind of things. But very few we see is thinking long-term about how do we handle the growth in data, how do we handle the future of unstructured data, right? So files is very linked to unstructured data. So this is a little bit of a background I'd like to share so that we set this mindset as we go along in towards today's webinar. So coming back to the typical statistics that a lot of you might have been familiar with. So rapidly, we are in a rapidly digitizing world, which results in a strong high data growth. When it comes back to today's topic on NAS, we see that traditional NAS, which was designed way before cloud or hybrid IT environment starts becoming more popular, right? Are increasingly getting harder and harder to manage. And yet at the same time, a lot of organizations are still on this traditional NAS kind of solutions. And the problem that it comes is that whenever a particular of this NAS starts to reach the limits, we often see many of our customers actually adding on new NAS, resulting in very fragmented data kind of situation and very hard to manage, especially when an organization grows bigger. So more trends down the road that I'll be sharing, and some of the key stats that the data growth that we are going to experience over the next 5 years will be huge as well. So this is the context that I'm sure all of you are familiar with as well. And before I move into, I have 4 trends that I actually want to share. So these are some things that when we discuss with our customers, these are some of the reasons why they're thinking of a solution like EasiShare plus a combination of our partner solutions as well. And the use cases that we discuss a lot is actually project share as well as user directories. So these 2 use cases are very common in the traditional NAS space. When an organization previously purchased that traditional NAS, they use it a lot in terms because they need collaboration for project sharing. So they open a folder for each particular project, and thereafter they use that folder to collaborate or put their files in. So this is when there's a team that's collaborating. What is different in user directories is that the folder, the so-called space, is cut out for specific users. Okay, so this could be reasons of allowing users to store some of their personal working files, or as well as backup their laptop in case there's a hardware failure. So like I said, the idea of hardware failure, backups and stuff were idea of about maybe 10, 20 odd years ago. Very common, we have this hardware failure problem, and we were always wondering about how do users back up all this data, and some of these concepts got driven based on this kind of usage pattern. And that was something that started many years ago. And in recent years, what we see is that because of this data growth, we kind of have highlighted 4 things that we see as we speak to our partners and customers. That certain organizations, they have an uneven technological development. So the second thing that they face is that a lot of organizations have organic growth, and when they grow organically, that is the space where IT and storage might have to keep up. And we also see increased complexity in terms of files. And in fact, there's also an emphasis of data types. So I'll elaborate a little bit more later as well. And the 4th thing that we see in our customers' environment is the requirements in terms of the collaboration when working at projects and working in with the data as well. Okay, jumping into the first point, uneven technological development. So what this means is that technology has actually evolved very quickly. So most of us are in the technology space. We know that even something as simple as NAS, that is just storing files, has actually transformed greatly. But a lot of organizations are still in so-called a technology that they might have adopted long ago. At most, they might be doing tech refresh. But tech refresh is not a digital transformation process. They are just merely doing tech refresh. And this is a business that I'm sure a lot of our partners here today used to be doing, and now increasingly face difficulties because it's a commoditized kind of business and where people just refresh the hardware. So a lot of times we want to promote this, that rethink about how they use NAS and stuff, and this is where the idea of modern NAS is also coming, not just from InspireTech, right? It's also a lot of data management players are promoting as well, and this is a trend that we do observe. And the reasons why some of these organizations have not moved on from a traditional NAS kind of operating environment is because they could have time constraint. They have a lot of data already in the legacy systems. The people in charge do not have the time to actually sit down and revisit how they move it, as well as there could be operational costs involved when handling such large data sets. And finally, which we see quite commonly, is typically a skill set and a mindset thing. So some of these administrators whom we meet may be dealing with this technology for maybe more than 10 years, and they find that they're comfortable with it, even if they know that their users might not be experiencing the best modern experience. It's just something that is still useful, it's still usable. They don't feel that it has broken, so they don't want to touch it. So that are some of the things that we see for organizations that are lagging behind sometimes. And what this means is that if they are stuck on the legacy NAS, right, because of that cyber threats that's coming in. So a while back, this wasn't something that was popular, but since the pandemic times, we see a lot of that ransomware, which is the reason why I think for the past 2 years, we have seen so much things about ransomware that we are just having that information overload. But yet at the same time, in today's webinar, I would also like to share that beyond ransomware, there's actually a lot of deeper planning that is required when it comes to handling the data growth in organizations. And this is something that I wish we can promote more to the customers and do the education so that they're more aware of what to look out for ahead, especially in this part about like cyber threats, where if they use continuing the use of the older kind of NAS without the more newer features and stuff, they might really be vulnerable and they get hit with a security incident. Another part about uneven technological development whereby the adoption is slow is that when we see traditional NAS, which I mean the file explorer way, a lot of users do actually compare it with modern ways of sharing files, which is what we see in terms of the likes of Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, etc. But these solutions are mostly cloud-based only. And the reason why users like the newer ways is because there is increased productivity, efficiency, as well as the security that it offers as compared to a simple traditional NAS that is not as smart. So some of the terms that we see a lot of vendors use is actually like smart NAS or NAS modernization use cases. So while it's still a file storage and NAS, there are actually different kind of NAS that's available in the market. So this is the first point. So this is the heaviest one. The next 3 points is going to be lighter, which that the other thing about data growth is that it comes from organic growth of an organization. So most of the customers that we meet, right, they would have grown over the years. So if there's an organization that stays stagnant or they have not been growing, or they might be even on the decline, then these are typically not the kind of customers we can get because most likely their business are on the decline. So a lot of times we will have to be working with customers that are actually growing. And when they grow, the amount of data will naturally increase as well. And that makes the requirements of NAS something that a simple traditional NAS might not be able to fulfill their organization's needs. The third area is in terms of the complexity of files. So putting a little bit into perspective, for some of us that are a little bit older, we'll remember that probably about 20 to 30 years odds ago, Lotus Notes was really popular. Most of the things can be done in Lotus Notes. In fact, when I started in the workforce, I find that Lotus Notes is so outdated. But as I speak to certain people who work in like 30, 40 years ago, they actually claim that Lotus Notes is the best software because you can do everything. That is the digital workplace of that time. But because of the changes in the world in terms of the requirements of working with data and stuff, we actually have more complexity. So in the past, there is no need for high resolution images, but now people expect it as norm. So previously, when you are doing high resolution videos or high resolution pictures, people think that you are the top of the line. But now, in today's world, it's really just an expected one. Like even CCTV images, in the past, as long as you can see something and it's blurry, most people are fine with it. But nowadays, people expect it to be like 4K quality. You can really investigate anything that happened, or even zoom into the specific event that happened and do the investigation. So that is really the shift, and it comes really from the digital drive that we went through, right? And next is in terms of the collaborations and advanced productivity. So given that whole context that I've just shared, right, there is a greater need for more collaborations in the organization. So previously, people might just work within their department. So a finance department may just work quite within themselves, and a sales department might just work within quite themselves. But as we move on and more collaboration is needed, then the more data is being shared. So more and more people needs access, and then after that resulting in more collaboration. So this cycle itself really gives us that a lot of our customers, users, they will start to expect more and more NAS, more from NAS, beyond just storing the files and expecting the files to be there. They expect the solution to help them to collaborate better and work better together to increase productivity. So with that, right, I really just want to showcase that 4 things that I've just mentioned, that whole thing about like the uneven development. So certain organizations, they are already embracing better storage solutions that are more scalable. Some could be on cloud, some could be private cloud, or some could be adopting more modern kind of storages on-prem. And then secondly is that there is definitely organic growth in a lot of organizations, and these are the organizations that will have to eventually plan and look at their storage needs. And third is that complexity of files as well as the data types. And finally, it's really the collaboration and advanced productivity. Yeah. Okay. Before I move on, next is one thing I forgot to mention. In terms of data types, the one concept that we frequently discuss on is in terms of the data classification due to security purpose, the sharing, right? So again, this is actually funded by the third point that I've mentioned, which is regards to the data type. So we have consideration that certain data are less sensitive, certain data are more sensitive, especially personal data, right? So these are also trends that drive the discussions in recent years about file security. All right, so with all these trends, quite a mouthful over here, right? What exactly do a modern NAS needs, right? So mention a little bit in a couple, but the next slide will really just consolidate the whole gist of what is expected of a modern NAS. First up, as EasiShare is the enterprise file security solution, definitely is in terms of simplifying the process in security, encryption, and data protection. Next is in terms of the ability to manage the data silos in the most efficiency, as well as to reduce redundant file copies as well. Third is in terms of reduction of costs. So this cost, there are just a lot of options now, and cost is definitely a factor when organizations are choosing the different approaches that's available. Finally, there's also this idea of multi-cloud, because we speak about the cloud space and stuff. All right, and this pretty much sums up the first half of my content actually. And the next part is really jumping into EasiShare. Okay, and now before I move on to the points that I have, I just want to share that this is the part that gets a bit tricky. So I dig a little bit hole. I dig a big hole in the sense that whatever that I shared earlier is a very big problem and is a very huge thing that we are discussing on. And where EasiShare comes in, right, I think I have a caveat here, is that EasiShare would typically not be the only software, only product that is part of the solution. And that's the reason why, if you see our slides here, right, we deliberately use the word help. So in the next few parts where I introduce EasiShare, I hope you stay in the mindset that EasiShare alone is not going to solve all the problems that I mentioned earlier and address some of the trends that was mentioned earlier. And that is the reason why we have our strategies in terms of a partner ecosystem, which I will elaborate a little bit more after I share more about EasiShare. But the caveat here is that just want to set your mind that the next few slides is really about how EasiShare can contribute and help to address some of these challenges. But yet at the same time, realistically speaking, EasiShare is never going to be the only solution that can fully solve this huge problem that I've just shared, right? So with that, I'll jump straight to EasiShare, and we have actually simplify some of the discussions that we have and some of the use cases into 5 general areas of why our customers actually buy our solution, right? So first is in terms of a general user experience. Second is in terms of a sync endpoint backup process. Third is in terms of internal collaboration. So I hope you see some pattern. The first, second point, in terms of the sequence, I do have a design over it in the sense that the first and second point is something closer to individuals. So earlier on, I mentioned about project share and user directory. So the first two situation is very related to the idea of user directories, where each user have their specific space and folder given by IT traditionally in order to achieve some of the backups or some of the storage requirements of an individual user. And as I move on to the third, as well as the fourth point, is where we start about project shares. So this link a little bit about the second use case of a traditional NAS, which is used for project share. And this really relates to both internal collaboration, that means users within the organization, as well as external collaboration. So this involves users that might not belong to the organization's network that might require that collaboration as well. And finally, this is in terms of file governance. So this fifth point is less so on the users and more in terms of IT. So this is also another change that we see. In the past, IT is just expected to solve IT problems as well as to ensure that the systems are running. But increasingly, as part of IT or expanding into certain companies, bigger companies will definitely have, which is the security department, typically working very closely with IT to have that overall governance in terms of file security. So this is the space that we see now, and these 5 areas we do have a lot of conversations with customers about. All right, let me quickly jump into the first point. So in the first is that the problem that customers face is that most staff do not study all these things that we're talking about, and they really just want a simple solution, and they're pretty hesitant to change. So if they feel that there's a little bit of complexity or there's something so different that they're uncomfortable using, right, then they will have that resistance. And where EasiShare comes in is that in our design, how we are different from some of the solutions out there is that there are solutions that is focusing on tying back to the old Windows File Explorer experience. So this is really a favorite of many people. Mount a network drive and you can use it. In fact, in my first 6-7 years of my career, all the places that I worked with use network drives as a very common means. And this network drive, in fact, it's the space that a lot of ransomware attacks happen as well. On the other hand, you will have a more modern experience of handling file, which is something that our younger generations are doing. So a lot of times you see students in school, they use a lot of Google Drive. They like that kind of experience and stuff. So what we do is that in terms of the experience of both, what EasiShare try to do is to merge them both. And that is our design philosophy for EasiShare as well. And for some of you that might not know, this year we are actually revamping the UI. So whatever you have been seeing now, it has been about 3 to 4 years, and we are investing heavily to redo the entire UI. So do stay tuned. We will, once it's ready, we will also do a webinar to just share with you the new design. And for some of you that might be interested, you can pester our sales and marketing department. Some of them do have some screenshots that they can share with you as a preview, as a teaser. So you can see that this product will be changed in terms of that user experience and the user interface in the coming months. Definitely within this year, it will be out. Okay, so with that, what we're trying to achieve is that simplified user interface that is intuitive and can support users to behave in a safe and secure manner. So that's the first point. Next is a very common problem that we talk about is in terms of backup. So a lot of times, what we see in the discussions is that there are a lot of solutions that is focusing on the infrastructure level backup. So database backup, VMs backup. So these are all technical solutions that we're very familiar with. But in terms of the end user space, sometimes in certain organizations, this is overlooked. They might not have a tool to allow that easy backup, frequent backup to a secure repository for further backup on the infrastructure layer. So there is actually a two-layer kind of thing in our experience. One is from the user's machine into a central repository. Secondly, is that this central repository at the same time has to be backed up as well. So there's a couple of parts in this process. And what we focus on is really, again, the individual user laptops portion to sync their files into a good repository that subsequently is well managed in terms of the whole backup and recovery strategy that organizations will need. So what we have in EasiShare is that our sync backup collects the data on the devices level and replicate them automatically to the EasiShare central repository, which is supported by an underlying storage. Secondly, we also have a small feature. So this one is versioning. Whenever a file is overwrite, there is always a capability of versioning to see what are the older files that are there as well. So these two features are very useful when it comes to talking about endpoint backup and recovery for the end users. And now, after the user directory portion, let's jump on more about the project share part, whereby we all work on projects, right? And that's the idea of project files that is coming in and out. So I'll start off with the internal first, in the fact that without a good solution, typically there is a very little visibility in terms of who edited certain files or trying to dig back certain files. And if you try to share internally via email, sometimes there might be attachments might not be feasible. Especially early on, I mentioned the trends nowadays that we work with high resolution images, we work with video files a lot. And in future, we might be even talking about metaverse. I mean, I have no idea how complicated the world will become, but that is definitely going to come as well. And most of the time for the traditional NAS kind of thing, when it comes to permissioning, a lot of organizations requires IT admins to manage permission due to the design and the structure of a more traditional kind of NAS. So what we have in EasiShare is, first, we have a manage feature. So some of you might know that we have a manage folder feature, which allows what we call as a second tier permission beyond just the IT administration permission. So if you can't catch this, feel free to approach us. We can explain this in more details, because this is something I see quite unique to EasiShare, in the sense that we have permissions that is provided by IT administrators from our admin portal, so that we term usually as like CA web permissions. And next, we have a second layer that we empower certain more privileged users to manage the permission within the user portal itself without going into the admin portal. So the reason why we design this way is such that there is a cut between the certain level of permissioning that is handled by IT, as well as empowering certain power users to take ownership and manage some of the permissions, so that not everything you need to go through IT. So this, you imagine certain organizations, what they do is that every time you need a permission change or you need a new project storage, right? What typically have to happen is that you create a ticket. Then after that, you wait. Maybe you need to wait 3 days, 5 days, or 7 days. Somebody will process it. And when somebody processes it already, then the project space come out. So in fact, this particular case that I just shared is very interesting. We do even have a prospect that is doing heavily on research and projects. And they are also talking to us to see how they can actually make this process better. So this is definitely a space that, while it sounds so simple, the complexity of and challenges that certain organizations face, they do need a better solution. And that's something where we come in to try to value add in terms of something that is beyond just a simple traditional NAS that is used by many organizations even to this day. And of course, role-based permission, EasiShare has it as well, but this one I will be just bringing it across because the idea of role-based access control is almost consistent across all systems. So I'll just move on. Finally, is a multi-platform access. So this one is pretty unique in the sense that a little bit of history of EasiShare. EasiShare actually started about maybe 7-8 years ago with the idea of purely just allowing a user to access their files on traditional NAS through mobile apps. So because in that organization, they have a lot of mobile users. So that was the era of mobility, right? Whereby we have the rise of iPhone and rise of Android systems, and even at some point, Windows Phone was also Microsoft was also trying to have a share. So at that time, right, we really started from that stage to allow users to actually access files while on the move. And along the years, I think now that we reflect upon the journey, right, if you would like to find out more, we can have deeper discussions, is that we have actually transformed ourselves from just mobility to a simple file sharing. In about 3 to 4 years back, Gartner calls it content collaboration platform. So that's the space that EasyShare sits in. To today, we position EasyShare as a file security platform, right? So that's really the evolution. So this one I'll just stop here first because then I will go on and on. But there is really that whole idea of why we shift the solution towards file security, and that journey is the part where we actually did not invent ourselves. It comes from customers' demand and where we see the trends are moving as well. So definitely happy to share more with our partners in terms of this process, and then thereon to share on with more prospects and customers along this journey. And moving on to the fourth point. So for us, right, some of our competitors don't differentiate this, but for us, we do differentiate between internal and external. The differentiation is very important to us because we find that sharing files with internal and external has very different level of risk and very different requirements. So very often, without thinking about a proper external file sharing process, there will be a lack of granularity in terms of the controls that are available, whether you block people from downloading, whether you want to restrict them from downloading 3 attempts so that there will be no excessive attempts in case the link get breached, in terms of other file expiry as well. So sometimes you might need some of these features. And it's important more so now because, again, with the rise of the focus about protection over personal data, for example, GDPR as well as PDPA, the responsibility that organizations have over such personal data has also increased. And when this data or other confidential data, such as your trademarks or your trade secrets, your intellectual property is involved, then there is a need to be very careful. And that is another reason why some of our customers approach us. Because what we offer is that we have file request and sharing feature. And if you understand EasyShare, we do have a very clear distinction between sharing with internal users that are within the EasyShare or the corporate network, versus a process for sharing with external. So in some solutions outside, the line between these parties are typically not very clear. There is still some difference in those solutions, but to the users, they don't see that clearly. So the design that those solutions want to do is to make it easy for users to share. But from our end, what we design it to be is that we want it to have a difference and have that difference process, because we find that external sharing and internal sharing has different requirements and different risk level as well. So we split that. And the next thing that we do is that we integrate with AV solutions and CDR solutions. This is more for files being uploaded into the organization. So we put this as part of external project sharing is because most organizations have their own internal network, all very secure. Most of the time when we talk about ransomware, it comes from an external person sending over. So it could be coming in from email, or it could be uploaded through a certain means. So what we have in EasiShare is that we can integrate with AV solutions and more modern CDR solutions, for example, depending on customer needs. So at this point, I want to re-emphasize again, earlier I mentioned a lot about our partner strategy. As I finish this section, I will revisit that again to let you understand how do we think of our partners and how do we work with our partners. So this is one small example. Definitely, I'll have more details as I finish this section of the webinar. Okay, so earlier on, I also mentioned in terms of the granularity of the controls. So in terms of like limiting download attempts, limiting whether the recipients can download. And also these are some of the features that EasiShare has as well. Last but not least is really the view-only mode, which prevents accidental editing. So this one, the value add that we have is in terms of the watermark. So some of our customers are quite interested in our watermark because it adds in that added resistance to prevent people from taking photos. So even if you take photo of a view-only document, you can try to make it more identifiable. So definitely there is no solution out there that can really prevent, because when we discuss, if someone is really so able to have access and have the time, right? If they can type out certain things or some stuff, right, they might still have it. So some of these controls, we will never fully eliminate the risk. So risk will never be fully eliminated, but what we mind share over here is that our solution can reduce the risk and make it more difficult to do the sort of illegal or unauthorized activities. So it's just like the gates and the doors to our house. It will definitely not 100% stop people from trying to barge in, but what it does is that it makes it a little bit more difficult, and it's with the same mindset that we design our product accordingly as well. Okay, and finally, the fifth point is file governance. So a lot of file sharing systems, as well as traditional NAS, sometimes the ability to track file changes and stuff can be quite challenging, or files can be downloaded or deleted without the knowledge of administrators. This I do have a caveat. So I do know the SMB protocol do have capabilities in terms of turning on the audit logs as well as certain versionings as well. But the reality is that a lot of organizations, a lot of administrators, they find it a little bit of a chore, or they find that they might need extra technical knowledge in order to achieve this. So what we do in EasiShare is that we'll simplify that. So in line with the theme of today's webinar, right, security and simplification, right? So we simplify this process. So we're not saying that other solutions do not have. What we strive to do here is that we make it simple enough such that IT administrators do not need to have very sophisticated technical knowledge in order to achieve the same level of file governance as to other more complex systems. So this is the position that we have. And over here, something that we are very proud of is in terms of our admin portal. So it allows a lot of IT teams to very easily do a couple of admin functions. And this is this particular area, wow, this point, I left it at the last. This particular point is actually one of the key driver of why a lot of our customers are looking at this, including some of our recent wins that will be coming out shortly as well. So another thing we have is in terms of admin role segregation. So there's something quite basic, is that you do not have only one super admin. You have capabilities to allow admins to have different roles as well. Again, there will be policy controls that we have. And finally, the one that I want to highlight more is in terms of our audit logs. So that is our strongest point. And okay, with that, I think there was a lot of things that I've said, but just to summarize a bit, we have 5 pillars here, starting with the left 2 being more user-centric, number 3 and number 4 being more project share, and number 5 being more about governance. And I would explain, right, I'll cover more in terms of our partner strategy. So this definitely, I would say, if you are slightly disappointed, because in terms of the answering of the idea of really transforming the traditional NAS, right, to some extent in this webinar, we are not able to cover everything. But what I want to share is that we do not see this as an EasiShare as the only solution. That is the reason why we have a lot of materials. We work with a lot of technology partners. So next on, I just want to explain a little bit more of our partner categories. We have one pillar which we call technology partners. So these are also partners that they have their own product that we work together with to provide a better solution. And for this, right, if you are new to our ecosystem, we have a series of partner webinar series, partner video series, as well as solution briefs. So these are all available from our marketing department, and our sales team will be able to help you access this as well. What the materials does is it helps to explain why we partner with a certain solution and how the combination of both solutions can help to solve the bigger problem. Because the reality is that EasiShare alone really can't solve that big problem that I've mentioned earlier on at the start of the webinar. So this is something that I would encourage all of you to reach out to our teams to get a little bit more information and address this complex problem as we learn and journey along this these trends and these data security, file security topics that our customers are asking. And the next is really my last slide. Want to share with you a little bit of our recent wins. So some are actually not so recent, but it spans mostly from last year to this year. We are quite happy to, in fact, actually expand to also Malaysia, Indonesia, and India. So this is in line with our second pillar of the partner strategy, which is our distributors and resellers in our channel. Some of you might understand that we actually did a lot of direct selling in the past. So in SpireTech, we do a lot of direct selling, and in what I listed down here, right, the Singapore one is actually our direct selling. But what we are happy to announce is that our Malaysian partners, our Indonesian partners, as well as our India partners, so these wins are actually from partners. So in SpireTech's position, we started this journey about 3 years back. We decided that we are not going for the direct selling kind of strategy. We want to promote more of a partner selling. Reason because both technology partner and both the channel partners are very important to us, in the sense that the technology partners will really help us to combine EasiShare with their technology to provide better solutions, while the channel and the resellers, distributors can help us to educate the industry, educate the customers, let them think about how they want to plan about their future in terms of the file security space, and then discuss further. So very happy that we have expanded, and in fact we are going to expand to certain more areas soon with our other partners. But over here, I probably, in the interest of time, will not go through everything. I do expect our marketing team to share more. We might have some partner enablement series that will be more focused on the case studies, going deep into each of these cases, so that we can share a little bit more about how we win, as well as but nonetheless, if you're curious about any of this particular area, feel free to reach out to us. And I would just want to end off with a reminder of our key customer groups. So government, healthcare, and financial, banking and financial, right? This remains our core pillar, and till this day, it remains our key success wins as well. And with that, I've come to the end of my section. So let me pass it back to Rostina. Yeah, do encourage her. So this is actually her first time. And
Yes, it's my first time.
pass it over you to wrap
Anyway,
it up over the last 10 minutes. Thank you, Rostina.
all right. Thank you so much, Takeway, for your insightful sharing. Okay, I hope everyone managed to take away some useful information and learn some new ways or new angles to help your customers and prospects after this. Okay, right now we will proceed with the Q&A portion. Okay, it looks like we do have one of the question coming from our Q&A box. It's coming from Shashank Shekhar. He asks, do we have a demo lined up? So Takeway, are you able to explain a little bit further on how they are actually able to retrieve a demo from us?
Yeah, I suspect he might be asking about this particular today's webinar, but unfortunately, so today there will be no demo lineup. But if you like to do a demo, can definitely reach out to after this. I think there's a feedback form you can indicate there. Our sales and marketing team will be happy to arrange a demo for you after the webinar.
All right, okay. So as I mentioned earlier on, if you do have any other questions that you'd like to ask or any burning questions that you have, feel free to click on the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom panel shown on the screen. Okay, and I will probably give another 10 seconds or so for anyone who wants to ask any questions. Okay, if there isn't, okay. All right, there's another question that popped up. This question comes from Jeremy Tay. He asked that in a nutshell, can EasiShare be classified as a middleware?
This is a good question.
Hmm.
You can consider EasiShare as a middleware. In fact, currently our marketing team, I think Rostina and team, including Miguel, will know that we are actually doing out a specific case studies of a little bit more detailed in terms of how some of our wins and describe better in terms of how our customers use EasiShare. So one of our customer use it in a sense like the idea that we also borrow from the industry is that the idea of a content firewall. So between the storage and the users, we become something in the middle that protects the crown jewels of the data that's being stored in storage level. Some people call this content firewall. A couple of years back, I had a sales colleague that like to call it a bulletproof vest. So to some extent, it can be considered a middleware, but I would also want to caveat that middleware, this word, right, is being used technically in quite a couple of other scenarios as well. So not that kind of middleware, but to some extent as a kind of content firewall, we could call it, or a layer, protection layer between underlying storages and users, right? It can be a middleware. And the reason why I brought out some of the case studies is that when we publish some of the case studies, there is actually one whereby the customer plan to use it as a middle protection for external file sharing, protecting the internal users from the external files that is coming. So their mindset is that EasiShare is that middle layer that protects the internal files from being accessed by external parties. So some of these materials will come along the way this year as well.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Takeaway, for answering that. I hope Jeremy Tay, he has cleared your doubts and you get the answer that you're looking for. Okay, moving on to the next question coming from K Man. The question goes like this: is it a WAF/reverse proxy?
Yeah. Nope. EasyShare is not. So EasyShare is purely really a software. So it's not a web application firewall. In fact, this question is very interesting. Thanks for bringing this out. Is that in my idea when I scripted, right? As I mentioned, EasyShare alone is not going to solve the entire problem that we face. And as a in my role where I actually involve myself in the deployment as well, right? When we do deployment, we are asked by customers network questions. We have to answer server questions. We have to answer encryption. We have to answer storage. So a lot of us, I hope we are all here doing sales work. And unfortunately or fortunately for us is that selling a software solution is no longer about selling a single product. So if some of us are still in the mindset that we might just need to sell a single product, unfortunately, in my opinion, I don't think that will be the way forward. We have to move towards a solution sales because even though I sell EasyShare, normally I face 90% of my problems that's nothing to do with EasyShare. It's usually the network, the bandwidth, or how do they do HA, how do they do DR. And many times I feel like telling the customers that's not my problem, but yet that is something that customers expect us to do so. So when we come to selling, we need to sell more solutions, and that ties in back to the reason why we also reach out to a lot of technology partners, understand their solution, understand how all these things can put together. So including the idea of like reverse proxy and web application firewall, how all these things can come together to have a more comprehensive approach towards file security. So this is the direction that we do, and the reason why we are expanding our partner outreach, and also the reason why we have to do this webinar series. One thing is that for us to share some of our mind share. The second thing is that really value the feedback from our partners to tell us what they experience on the ground. Is it something different from what I said? So because what I see is sort of could be just a little bit, and then a lot of inputs is actually coming from our partners and customers as we refine the product, make it better, position it better, explain it to customers, and others better as well. So that is the whole idea of why we are driving this webinar series, churning out more marketing materials, and the direction that our marketing team is also moving as well. So a little bit extra expansion, but hope it answers the questions and give a little bit of extra details of our approach.
Right. Thank you, Takeaway, for answering that question.
Yep.
Guess that's a very good explanation about the question just now. All right. I guess there are no more questions coming in from the Q&A, and it looks like Takeaway has cleared most of the question or all the questions lined up. Okay.
Rostina, you can ask the particular one that you're working on.
Okay.
That you're
All
working
right.
on something in the UAE Dubai market, right?
Yeah. Okay. So because I'm really quite new in Inspire Tech, I'm really new to the team, and of course, I'm very new to the product as well, EasiShare. So I'm just wondering, since recently, right, I was being tasked to work together with one of our partner in UAE. Yeah, touching on the topic of data residency and compliance. Yeah, so I would like to know how EasiShare can actually help the organizations to, like over there to adhere data residency compliance.
Okay, thanks, Rostina. Yep. So this topic, I think some of us we find easy to explain, but at the same time, I also struggle to put it clearly. So I'll just make another attempt.
Sure.
And I will go back to a little bit of history whereby a couple of years back, there was actually this drive towards the cloud, right? So the cloud was the thing. And even cloud alone was driven for almost 15 years since AWS first started. And then after that, Microsoft Azure driving very quickly. And then everybody going onto this cloud space. Personally, for us, even though EasiShare will focus a lot on on-prem private cloud kind of scenario, even though we do support public cloud kind of scenario as well, but most of our customers remain on-prem as well as private cloud kind of cases. A lot of times, including when we internally evaluating, we were thinking like, is there no more space for EasiShare because everybody is going to cloud, right? Why not just everybody use Google Drive, OneDrive? And in fact, we ourselves also use a lot of cloud solutions. So over the years, what I see is that there's more clarity. Earlier on, because it was the hype, everybody was hopping to it. A lot of management were just like, oh, everybody is looking at cloud. Let's put something on the cloud without thinking much about the control, security aspects of stuff. Who is responsible for what? So people just expect that it should be fine. But now as we start reflecting upon the power play of a lot of cloud players, US players, some of the geopolitics and some of the data that is involved. So in the past, people don't think of like which are more sensitive data and which are less sensitive data. But now people start to think that, okay, there are some things that are more sensitive. There are some things that that is regulated. So government, sometimes they start seeing this, they also start putting in regulations, or even before government put in regulations, a lot of organizations at the management level, at the C-suite level, they start to realize that, oh, okay, when you put things onto the cloud, there are implications that, okay, this is not the case, that assumption was wrong, maybe this particular kind of use case is suitable, that particular kind of use case is not suitable. So a lot of organizations started evaluating this, and then that is where we see that, okay, when organizations have clarity about like what is supposed to be on cloud and what is not supposed to be on cloud, then there's a space where EasiShare comes in again as part of the solution to bring that experience and yet have that on-prem or private cloud kind of control. And that ties back to Rosina, right? The question about data residency and data localization. And these words are coming out because the concerns are real. We hear it on the ground. And what we can do better is in terms of addressing it and explaining how all the solutions can come together and tighten and guide our customers as to how do they use the cloud area as well as the on-prem area and manage this thing more strategically and holistically. So that's that picture that we are entering into now.
Okay, right. Thank you for clarifying that, Takeaway. Now I do have a better understanding.
So we should expect you to write good content for looking forward to more marketing materials from your department as well.
I'll try. Okay. So anyway, if anybody of you or any one of you have any further questions and didn't get a chance to ask in our Q&A session, don't worry. You may still indicate them in our feedback form that you will be redirected to at the end of this webinar. After which our team will review and get back to you with your answers accordingly. Okay, over here, we do have some takeaways and resources for everyone to look at. Based on what Takeaway has mentioned earlier on and shared earlier on, we have previously conducted webinars with our technology partners, such as Cohesity and Deroco, emphasizing about ransomware resiliency, data management, and of course, beyond security and data management, digital trust is something that matters in today's digital age, especially when we are constantly dealing or reliant on digital transactions, identity, and data. So if you're interested to view these past webinar recordings, simply log on to the bit.ly links that is shown on the screen. And also you may choose to take a screenshot or take a photo if you want so that you won't forget the links. Yeah, and I will probably give around 5 seconds for everyone to do that.
And Rostina, I'm sure the slides will be shared to the participants, right?
Yes, definitely. The
so
slides will be shared after this webinar.
So we will ensure that there's no excuse that they will miss this.
Yeah, I mean, just to be safe, you want to put it in your phone or save it into your phone gallery, it will be handy. Okay, all right, let's move on to the next segment. Right now it's polling time. Before we end off this webinar, I would like to do a quick poll with everyone here to know what are the brand solutions or technologies that your customer is currently using when it comes to exchanging files and collaboration. Okay, I will now launch the poll. I hope that everyone can see the poll on their screen right now as I speak. Okay. Okay, we are seeing the responses coming in right now. Thanks for all the responses. Let's give everyone around 10 to 20 seconds to log in your answers. Okay, I will end the poll right now. Okay, I will just share the results on the screen and see whether you are able to see on your screen. And let's see what we have here. Okay, looks like most of you have chosen Microsoft OneDrive as your answer. Interesting. All right. Okay. And on that note, I would like to share that if you are interested to have any further discussions regarding co-marketing campaigns or joint opportunities, you may indicate your interest in the feedback form at the end of the webinar. Or also if you have any existing customers or prospects maybe that you feel might have the need for a secure file sharing platform, you may also indicate that as well in the feedback form. And lastly, if you would like to deep dive into our product functionalities and experience, do indicate that in our feedback form as well. If you want to know more about EasiShare, just let us know. We will be happy to reach out to you. Okay, with that, I think we have finally come to the end of the webinar. We appreciate all your time and thank you, Takeaway, for sharing all your insightful information and useful information. Goodbye and see you again.